I never expected my father to be the warm and fuzzy type. Even as a kid, I knew he wasn't like the dads in the movies, the ones who packed your lunch with smiley faces drawn on the napkins, who cheered like maniacs at soccer games, who told you they were proud of you just for existing. Douglas Morgan wasn't any of that. He was duty, discipline, direct deposits. He paid the bills, drove a practical truck, fixed leaky faucets, and talked more to our thermostat than he ever did to me. But as flawed as he was, I never thought he'd erase me completely. I was 13 when my parents divorced. The memory of that day is sharp, unforgiving, like frost on glass. He stood in the living room, suitcase in one hand, car keys dangling from the other, looking more like a business traveler than a father leaving his family. My mom stood quietly by the doorway, arms crossed tight. I watched from the stairs, clutching the railing, half hoping he'd look up. He never did. "You can visit whenever you want, kiddo," he said as he walked out. He said it like he was offering me a free trial of something he didn't think I'd actually use, but I wanted to use it. God, I did. Except the visits never happened. At first, there were a few awkward phone calls, quick dinners every other month that felt more like mandatory check-ins than anything meaningful, but even those faded. The calls got shorter. Then they stopped. I remember sitting on the curb with my suitcase when he was supposed to pick me up for my 15th birthday. He never came. I waited 3 hours before Mom came outside and gently said, "Come inside, sweetheart." I never brought it up again. By the time I graduated high school, I had already learned how to live with that quiet ache. When he didn't show up for my college art showcase, the one where I got featured in the city's student exhibition, I didn't even flinch. My mom cheered the loudest. My friends threw me a party. But something inside me still waited. I'm 27 now. I live in a modest one-bedroom apartment in downtown Minneapolis. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. I work as a graphic designer at a boutique agency during the day and freelance at night. I make enough to get by, to build something that's completely mine. My apartment smells like vanilla candles and ambition. It's filled with plants, thrifted art, and pieces of me. I don't have a lot of people in my life, but the ones I do, especially my mom, are golden. She's the kind of woman who keeps a drawer full of birthday cards for every zodiac sign and cries at Hallmark commercials. She never spoke badly about Dad, not once. "He just doesn't know how to love," she used to say gently. "Some men think parenting is just showing up with a checkbook." I used to nod like I believed her, but deep down I hoped he'd prove her wrong. 3 weeks ago, he called me out of the blue. I was knee-deep in a design deadline, staring at 5 versions of a poster that all looked wrong when my phone buzzed. Douglas Morgan, incoming call. I blinked at the name like it belonged to a ghost. I answered. "Hello?" "Hey, Callie," he said, his voice casual, like he called me every week. "I just wanted to let you know. I'm getting married next weekend. Nothing big, just a small ceremony, me and Danielle, courthouse, really low-key." And I stared at the calendar on my wall. Okay, congratulations, I guess." "Thanks, kiddo." Kiddo. He hadn't called me that since I was 14. I waited for more, maybe an invitation, a hope you can come, but there was nothing. Just awkward silence and then, "Anyway, I just thought you should know. Take care, Callie." Click. I sat in my chair for a full 5 minutes after the call ended, staring at my screen. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe he meant it when he said it was small. Maybe it really was just a formality. Maybe Danielle didn't want a big thing. But that weird feeling, the one that whispered, "He's hiding something," lingered. 2 Sundays later, it was raining lightly. The kind of slow, soft rain that makes you want to stay in pajamas all day. I had just deep-cleaned my kitchen, warmed up some leftover pad thai, and curled up on the couch. I opened Facebook to kill some time. The first post on my feed was from my cousin Laura. "So happy for Uncle Doug and Danielle. Such a beautiful day." My brain barely registered it at first. But then I saw the photo attached. There he was, my father, grinning in a perfectly tailored navy suit, holding a champagne glass. Beside him, a woman with perfect blonde curls in an elegant designer dress. Behind them, a floral arch, string lights, people in formal wear, laughter. And standing right next to them were 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl, both smiling, both holding flutes of sparkling juice. The caption? My new family feeling blessed. I froze. My fingers hovered over the screen. I clicked the album. It opened to dozens of pictures. The ceremony, the reception, toasts, dancing, cake, candid laughter, happy tears. There were group photos, his new family all huddled close. Everyone smiling. Everyone, except me. I wasn't in a single picture, because I hadn't been invited, because I didn't even know it was happening. My stomach twisted. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. It wasn't just a courthouse ceremony, it was a wedding, a celebration, an entire chapter of his life that he didn't think I belonged in, and he didn't even bother to lie about it properly. I scrolled furiously, looking for some mistake, a tag, a mention, a comment, but there was nothing. Then I saw it. A comment under one of the photos. Doug, what a beautiful family. You all look so happy together. My heart sank, not because it was a lie, but because to them, it was the truth. They didn't know I existed, because he hadn't told them, because he wanted it that way. He hadn't just forgotten me, he had replaced me. Suddenly I couldn't breathe. My throat was dry, my chest tight, years of birthdays missed, apologies never said, 100 tiny cuts, and now, the final one, the wedding photo, the caption, my new family. It wasn't just about that day. It was about everything before it, everything after. The moment became crystal clear. I wasn't grieving a wedding. I was grieving being erased. But I didn't cry. Not this time. I closed my eyes, took a slow breath, and then I opened my contacts. Douglas Morgan. I hit call. He picked up on the second ring, his tone so casual it made me want to scream. Hey, Callie. What's up? I stared at the wedding album still open on my screen. Congrats, Dad, I said, voice steady but cold. The wedding looked beautiful. Silence. I didn't wait for him to explain, because this time, I wasn't asking for answers. I was demanding them. Congrats, Dad. The wedding looked beautiful. Those 7 words landed like thunder in the silence between us. The line didn't cut out, but it may as well have. I could practically hear him scrambling for something to say, something that would make this less awful than it already was. Oh, you saw the pictures, he finally said. His voice suddenly deflated, like a balloon that had been punctured mid-flight. Danielle, she just wanted to share the joy, you know. I didn't even know she was posting them. I let out a laugh, not the funny kind. The kind that makes your skin crawl because it's made of disbelief and rage. Well, I said, letting the sarcasm drip. She shared it, loud and clear, the dress, the cake, the speeches, the new family caption. I especially liked that part. He paused again, but not for long. It wasn't meant to be a big deal, really. It was just supposed to be a simple courthouse thing, low-key. That's what we talked about, remember? Yeah, I replied slowly, evenly. Except that's not what happened, is it? I walked over to the window, staring at the rain streaking down the glass. My own reflection glared back at me. My voice didn't shake, but my fingers did. You had a full wedding, Dad. Photos, guests, her kids standing next to you like they belonged there, like they were yours, like they were the only ones who ever mattered. He sighed. The long, exhausted kind of sigh he used to give me when I asked too many questions as a kid. Callie, he said, like my name was an inconvenience. It's not what you think. Really? I shot back. Because it looks an awful lot like you replaced me. That's not fair. Fair? My laugh this time was louder, sharper. You want to talk about fair? You didn't even invite me. Hell, you didn't even tell me it was happening. You called me a week before and said it was just a courthouse thing. Like I was some distant coworker you had to notify, not your daughter. It wasn't about replacing you, he said quickly. I wanted to avoid the drama, keep things simple. There it was again. Simple. That word, that excuse. He'd used it my whole life. Simple is easier. Simple doesn't ask questions. Simple doesn't come with a daughter you haven't called in 6 months. You know what's simple? I snapped. Inviting your own child to your wedding, saying, Hey, Callie, I'm getting married, and I'd love for you to be there. That's simple." He was quiet again. "I didn't think you'd want to come," he finally said. His voice was lower now, more careful. I almost dropped the phone. "You didn't think I'd want to come? Since when do you get to decide that for me?" "I just thought—" He trailed off. "No, say it." "I thought it might be awkward," he mumbled. "For Danielle, for her kids, for you." I turned away from the window, heart pounding. "So you thought it'd be less awkward to pretend I didn't exist? To show the world a perfectly filtered photo of a happy little family and hope I just— What? Never saw it? It wasn't like that." "It's exactly like that." I could hear it in his breathing, rapid, tight, like he wasn't used to this version of me, the one who wouldn't let things go, the one who didn't play the good daughter anymore. "You didn't just forget me, Dad. You made a choice, a very deliberate choice to leave me out, because it was easier for you to pretend I was never part of your life than to admit you messed up." He said nothing. "You gave her kids everything you never gave me. A toast, a speech, a smile. They're part of her life," he said quietly. "And now, mine." "Right," I whispered. "And I'm not." "Got it." I swallowed hard. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want him to hear me break. I didn't want him to know that even after everything, even after years of abandonment and silence, I still stupidly hoped he'd show up for me just once. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said, voice softer now. "But you did," I replied, steel in my tone. "And you didn't even have the guts to tell me yourself. I had to find out through Facebook, like some ex from high school you forgot to block." More silence. Then, "Callie, can we meet? Please, just talk in person. I'll explain everything." "No," I said flatly. "You had your chance to talk to me before the wedding. You didn't want me there. Don't try to rewrite it now that people are seeing what kind of father you really are." "I'm not trying to rewrite anything. You just want to save face," I snapped. "That's all this is. Damage control." He didn't deny it. "Callie, please." I closed my eyes. My hand was trembling, but I held the phone steady. "You don't get to call me kiddo anymore," I said softly. "You don't get to act like we're still something when you already chose someone else. I didn't replace you." "Yes, you did," I said. "And the worst part? You don't even see it." I could hear his breath catch, the sound of someone realizing, maybe for the first time, that they were actually the villain in someone's story. "You made your choice, Dad," I whispered. "Now live with it." And I hung up. For the first time in my life, I ended the conversation. I stood still for several seconds, the dial tone echoing in my ears like distant thunder. I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my laptop. I clicked on Facebook. I returned to his page. The wedding album was still there, dozens of photos capturing a life I wasn't part of. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I started typing. "Congratulations on your wedding, Dad. I wish you and your new family all the best. Since I wasn't invited, I'll celebrate from afar, just like I always did growing up. Hope your stepkids appreciate the father they got since I never had one. Cheers." I reread it. Every word felt right, raw, honest, and then I hit post. Within seconds, notifications started coming in. Likes, comments, shocked emojis. Messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years, cousins, friends of my mom, one of his coworkers, then the most satisfying one of all. "Douglas Morgan commented on your post. Callie, can we talk? Please." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. For the first time ever, he was chasing me. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. My post was barely up for 10 minutes before the notifications started flooding in like a burst dam. At first, it was just a trickle. Likes, the shocked face emoji, the occasional heart from people who probably didn't even read the caption. But then, the comments started. My cousin Ashley. "Wait, what? You weren't there?" My old neighbor, Mrs. Langford, the one who used to bake banana bread every Saturday. "I thought it was a private ceremony. Doug said no one was invited." A girl I hadn't talked to since high school. Wow, this hit me so hard. Parents can be so clueless. "Sending you love, Callie." And then there was one from Uncle Troy, my dad's brother, the one I hadn't seen since my high school graduation. Callie, maybe this isn't the best place for family drama. Talk to your father privately. Privately. That word made me clench my jaw. For 27 years, everything had been private. My disappointment, my abandonment, my tears. Doug Morgan had always counted on silence to protect him, but silence was over. Now he had an audience, and the show was just beginning. By the end of the day, my post had over 200 interactions and nearly 60 comments. I didn't expect it to go viral, but it exploded just enough to shake the people who mattered, to make them uncomfortable. Doug Morgan commented on your post, "Callie, can we talk, please?" The irony almost made me laugh. For the first time in my life, my father wanted to talk, but I wasn't ready to let him off the hook. I clicked on his Facebook page again, something I now did with surgical precision. I scrolled through the wedding album one more time, lingering on one picture in particular, the group photo taken just after the toasts. There he was, arms around Haley and Josh, both grinning like prom royalty. Danielle stood next to him, her hand resting gently on his chest. The caption, "Couldn't be happier to start this new chapter with my family." I zoomed in on the comments, and then I saw it, the one that would make everything unravel even faster. From Rick Hanley, his boss. "What a beautiful family, Doug. Wishing you and your kids all the best." Kids. Plural. Like I was one of them. Like I had been there. Like I was still part of the picture. I didn't hesitate. I typed, fast and sharp. Actually, I wasn't invited. Doug decided his stepchildren were more important than his actual daughter. Just thought you should know. Post. No backing down. Within minutes, the reaction count jumped again. Doug must have seen it immediately because my phone rang not even a minute later. "Dad!" I let it ring until voicemail, then again and again. 3 missed calls in under 10 minutes. Then the text started. "Dad. Callie, please answer. We need to talk." "Dad. I didn't mean for you to find out that way." "Dad. Can we just talk? Please. I owe you an explanation." For years, I'd stared at my phone wishing his name would pop up. Now that it did, I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No regret, just power. The next morning, I got a call from someone else entirely. Mom. I answered on the first ring. "Hey, Mom," I said casually, pouring myself a coffee. Her voice was soft, cautious. "Hi, sweetheart. I wanted to check on you." I smiled faintly. "I'm okay." She hesitated. "Doug called me." I paused. Of course he did. "He's not taking it well," she said gently. "Well," I replied, leaning against the counter, "maybe he shouldn't have tried to erase me from his life like I was an old Facebook friend he forgot to delete." She didn't laugh. Instead, she said, "He says he made a mistake." I rolled my eyes. "That's putting it mildly." "I know," she said, quieter now. "But he's really shaken. He's been calling me nonstop. Says he can't sleep, that he's been reading your post over and over again." I stayed silent. "I'm not saying you owe him anything, Callie," she added. "But I don't want you to carry this anger forever." I closed my eyes. "Mom, I've carried this anger for years. I carried it through every birthday he forgot, every recital he skipped, every voicemail I deleted after he promised to call back and didn't." "I know," she whispered. "And for once," I said, "I finally feel like he's the one carrying it." The texts didn't stop. "Dad, I understand if you don't want to talk, but I hope someday we can." "Dad, please, Callie, just give me a chance to explain. One conversation." "Dad, you matter. You always have." That last one made me laugh bitterly. I mattered? To a man who had literally rewritten his life to exclude me? To someone who smiled with kids he'd only known a year and couldn't be bothered to show up to my college showcase? I shook my head. Words didn't mean anything. Not anymore. 3 days after the storm broke, I was at my desk, editing a campaign for a local art gallery, when I got a direct message from someone unfamiliar. Haley Morgan, 17, Danielle's daughter. I hesitated, then clicked. Subject: "Hi, I'm your stepsister, I guess? Hey, Callie, I know this is super weird and probably not the right time, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. We didn't know about you, not even a little bit. Doug never mentioned you, not once. But after all the stuff blew up, I asked him, and he finally told us everything, and he cried. I've never seen him cry. It freaked me out. Anyway, I just wanted you to know I think what he did was really wrong. You deserve to be there. You deserve a dad. I hope you find peace, whatever that looks like. Haley. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't know what I felt, not anger, not sympathy, something in between. They hadn't known about me? That was the part that gutted me the most. He didn't just exclude me, he erased me. Even in his new life, I was invisible. Later that night, I sat on the couch, laptop open, cursor blinking and a blank email reply. Doug had emailed me 2 days earlier. I'd ignored it. But now, I wasn't sure. Not because I wanted to forgive him, but because for once, he wanted something from me. And I finally had a choice, a real one. After rereading Haley's message, I opened his email, and I typed, "Fine, 1 coffee, public place, 30 minutes, that's all." His reply came 3 minutes later. "Thank you. You pick the place. I'll be there." I closed my laptop. This wasn't closure, this was control. And I wasn't done yet. Silence can be comforting. But this silence wasn't. After I sent the email agreeing to meet my father for coffee, 30 minutes, no expectations, I felt a kind of weight settle on my chest. Not heavy like grief, not sharp like rage, just pressure. I hadn't told anyone, not Mom, not even Jess, my best friend since college. I wanted it to be mine, whatever this was. The morning of the meeting, I woke up early. Too early. My nerves were a tangled mess under my skin. I spent almost an hour debating what to wear before settling on a deep green sweater and black jeans. Casual, but adult. Neutral. I didn't want to look like the wounded daughter, but I also didn't want to look like I was trying. When I arrived at the cafe, a small spot in Uptown with exposed brick and string lights that stayed up year-round, he was already there. Doug Morgan, my father. Sitting at a table by the window with 2 coffees already on the table. He stood when he saw me, and for the first time, I noticed the slump in his shoulders, the way his hands trembled slightly as he gestured. "Callie," he said, voice cautious. "Thanks for coming." I nodded. No smile, no hug. Just sat down and wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "Let's talk," I said. He cleared his throat like a high school student about to give a class presentation. Then he dove right in. "I messed up. Not I'm sorry. Not let me explain. Just 3 words. I messed up. I know that doesn't even begin to cover it," he added quickly, "but I wanted to say it out loud, first." I sipped the coffee, too bitter. "I didn't just mess up with the wedding," he continued. "I messed up with everything, with you." I didn't stop him. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to see if he could finish a full thought without trying to make himself the victim. "I thought I was doing what made sense," he said. "I told myself it would be easier if I kept the wedding simple, small, that it would spare everyone awkwardness." I raised an eyebrow. "Easier for who?" He winced. "For me? For Danielle? For her kids? For the story I was telling myself?" There it was. The story, that perfect, polished version of his life where he was a good guy starting over. No baggage, no guilt. Just a new wife, 2 shiny stepkids, and a daughter he'd boxed up and placed quietly in storage. "You never even told them about me," I said flatly. "Not Haley, not Josh. You pretended I didn't exist." He stared at his cup like it had answers. "I was ashamed," he admitted. "Not of you. Never of you. Of myself. Of what I did. What I didn't do." I stayed quiet. I kept thinking, if I just moved on, maybe I wouldn't have to deal with the wreckage. Maybe you didn't need me. I let out a bitter chuckle. "That's rich. You convinced yourself your daughter didn't need her father?" "I didn't deserve to be your father," he said. "I knew that. And the longer I stayed away, the harder it was to come back." He rubbed his hands together nervously. "I didn't want to deal with the guilt, so I avoided it. Avoided you." "Until I posted on Facebook," I said. He looked up, finally meeting my eyes. Yeah, that was a wake-up call. A brutal one. But I needed it. I took a deep breath. It would have been easier if he'd just made excuses. If he'd tried to blame me, or Mom, or complicated circumstances. But instead, he was owning it, piece by broken piece. You know what I remember most from high school? I asked suddenly. He blinked. What? Senior art showcase. I worked for months on my display. It was the first time I felt proud of something. Mom was there, of course, my friends. Even Jess brought her parents. I paused, let it sink in. But not you. He opened his mouth, closed it again. I waited outside for 20 minutes after it ended, I said, voice calm but sharp. Told people maybe you were just late, but I knew. You weren't coming. You never were. He looked down. I know I hurt you, Callie, not just once, over and over again. I don't expect you to forgive me. Good, I said, because I'm not there yet. He nodded slowly. I wouldn't be either. The honesty in that moment, it wasn't comforting, but it was something. A splinter of reality in a world built on broken promises. I got a message from Haley, I said, changing gears. He looked surprised. You did? She told me she didn't even know I existed until all of this happened. His face turned red. I wanted to tell them, I really did, but I thought if I could just be better this time, maybe I could leave all the pain behind. You don't get to bury your past, I said, especially when your past is a person. He nodded. I know. You were never the problem, Callie. I was. It took me too long to see that. There it was again. That slow, heavy kind of remorse. Not dramatic, not performative, just heavy and real. We talked for nearly 2 hours about everything, not just the wedding, but the divorce, his guilt, his fear, my silence, my sadness. He didn't try to rewrite history. He let me tell it how I remembered it, and he listened, which strangely was the most unexpected part. When the check came, he instinctively reached for it. I stopped him. No, I said, pulling out my card. I've been paying my way for years. I'm not about to stop now. He gave a soft, almost pained smile. Of course. Outside, the breeze was sharp with early fall. The leaves around us danced in swirls of orange and gold. He turned to me as we reached the sidewalk. Do you think we'll talk again? I didn't answer right away. You can hope, I finally said. But that's up to me now. And then I walked away, and this time he didn't stop me. That night, he deleted every wedding photo from Facebook. It didn't matter. It wasn't about the photos anymore. It was about the years that went undocumented, the birthdays uncelebrated, the calls never made, the daughter never claimed, and finally, I was done holding the weight of those years. Some endings don't need fireworks. They don't come with dramatic music or epiphanies under pouring rain. Some endings arrive quietly, like a door clicking shut behind you. And for me, that moment came a week after our coffee meeting. I didn't tell anyone what we talked about. Not my mom, not my friends, because I didn't need to process it out loud anymore. I had already done the hard part, facing the person who broke me, and realizing they no longer held the power to do it again. The days that followed were strange. Strangely light, strangely calm. I thought I'd feel triumphant, or maybe hollow, but what I felt was free. Not because he fixed anything, he didn't, but because I stopped trying to make him fix me. That same week, I got a message from Haley again. It was short, thoughtful, not overstepping. Hey, Callie, just wanted to say I'm really glad you met with Doug. He hasn't stopped talking about you, in a good way. Also, your post kind of changed him. He's trying to be more present with us now, even started cooking dinner once a week. He's terrible. We pretend it's edible. Anyway, thanks. I think you woke him up. I stared at the message for a while, unsure how to respond. Then I realized I didn't have to. It wasn't about what he became for them. It was about what I no longer needed from him. And somehow, knowing I broke the cycle, even if it didn't benefit me directly, that was enough. A few days later, I found myself driving through an old part of town. I hadn't planned to go near my childhood home, but somehow my car turned left on instinct. Muscle memory. There it was, the 2-story house on Linden Avenue. The porch still creaked. The swing set was long gone. The tree in the front yard had been cut down. The shutters needed painting. But the ghosts were still there, I parked across the street and just sat for a while, watching, remembering, letting go. I remembered the summer nights I spent waiting for him to pick me up, watching headlights that never turned down our street. I remembered the Father's Day card I made in 5th grade, folded construction paper, glitter glue, a crooked heart. I kept it under my pillow for 2 weeks. He never showed. Back then, I thought those memories defined me. Now, they were just pages in a chapter I had finally finished. That night I wrote something, not for work, not for social media, just for me. I opened my laptop, clicked into a blank document, and wrote a letter I never intended to send. Dear Dad, you were never really a dad. You were a placeholder. A person whose absence taught me more about strength than your presence ever could. I spent years carrying your silence like it was my fault. I wore your absence like a second skin, but not anymore. You gave me nothing, and somehow I still turned that into something. I don't forgive you because you asked for it. I forgive you because I deserve peace. Goodbye, Dad. Not with anger, not with spite, with finality and freedom. Callie. I saved the file, named it Closure, closed the laptop, and exhaled. About a month later, something unexpected happened. I ran into him, at Trader Joe's, of all places. I was standing in the frozen aisle, comparing vegan mac and cheese brands, when I heard someone say softly, "Callie?" I turned, and there he was, Doug, wearing jeans and a button-down, no Danielle, no Haley, just him. We both froze for a second. Then he smiled, a small, genuine one. "You look good," he said. "Thanks. So do you," I replied. We stood there awkwardly, two people with a mountain of history between them and nothing pressing to say. Then he cleared his throat. "I've been meaning to reach out, but I didn't want to push." "I appreciate that," I said. He looked at his cart. "Still learning how to shop for 3 teenagers. Danielle's daughter went vegetarian. It's an adventure." I laughed quietly, not because it was funny, but because it was real. He looked back up at me. "I meant what I said," he added. "That day, I want to be better. Even if it's not for you, though I hope it is, I want to try." I nodded, and after a beat I said, "I hope you are. For them. For yourself." His eyes softened. "And maybe someday. For you too?" "Maybe," I said, "but I'm not waiting for that." He gave a short, understanding nod, and we parted ways with nothing more than a glance. No hugs, no goodbyes, just peace. That night, I came home, cracked open a new journal, and wrote 3 words at the top of a fresh page. I am enough. Not because he finally saw me, not because Facebook validated my pain, but because I survived a truth that once tried to break me. Being forgotten doesn't mean you're forgettable. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us the most don't know how. Sometimes we grow up chasing closure when what we really need is clarity. And sometimes healing doesn't look like reconciliation. It looks like walking away with your head high and your heart intact. I didn't get the father I needed, but I became the woman I was always meant to be. And that is more than enough.